Good evening guys, welcome back to the Mechs and Monsters channel. In this video today we are going to go through the basics of how to prep and sand your resin models ready to paint. Okay guys, so what I'm doing is, as you see, it's a little rough. So this is the head at the minute, but you see what I've done around the mould lines, I've filled with green stuff. It looks really rough at the minute, but this is why what I'm going to be doing now is sanding this down. I'm going to be sanding down, get rid of these mould lines. By the time I finish with it, when it's all sanded, I'll give it a soapy wash and then just let it dry. The rest of the pieces are fine. It's just the mould lines I'm going to work on. Now it's a robot, so obviously these are all part of the detailing. I'm not going to be touching them. This is purely where the model actually joined together. So I'm going to be cleaning this all up. So that's the bottom skull. That's fine. So that'll probably just get a light rubbing. What I'm going to be using, I've got some very fine sandpaper. I also have a Dremel. I mean, this is old faithful. I've had this for about 12 years, something like that. So I got this before the 18 volt and all the cordless stuff started coming out. But I know there are other rotary tools on the market that you can buy cheap, a lot cheaper. So they're probably just as good. I know guys using cheap ones I bought from Aldi, and they do the job fine. At the time I wanted a Dremel. I got it. You can see it's had some battering over the years. It still goes strong, and I bought this sort of attachment so I can work remote. I'm not carrying the big bulky motor around everywhere, so that just attaches in, and I've got a big cord. You can still buy this. You can still buy all this. So I'm going to plonk that there on my little hoop, and then what I tend to do is buy. I think I got this from Amazon for about £12, and I get, I think it's 240 sanding bits. I've been through a couple of boxes of this stuff over the years, but they do the job fantastically. Not for heavy duty sanding, but for doing what I'm doing here on models, just to lightly sand something over it, it's absolutely perfect. So I'm going to use the medium size one, and what you get is one of these nozzles. So what you do, you get your little sandpaper, little sanding, you slot that on, and what happens is when you screw that screw down, it expands the rubber inside, which then grips it. So I need to do, again, I'm a Leatherman whore. Being a tradesman, I've used every tool known to man, so I've tried and tested it, and I love my Leathermans. I think this Leatherman I've had 6 years, something like that, and it's still as good as the day I bought it. So I've loosened that off. We'll slide that on. Okay, and what I'm going to do now, like I said, screw that screw up, and then that's going to cause the rubber inside to expand out, which will then grip the sandpaper and hold it in place. I know it sounds like very basic stuff, but there's probably people out there who don't know how this works and looking to get a rotary tool. So I always treat it as though somebody who's watching doesn't know how to use this. Don't need to go crazy, just nip it up and it will slowly start expanding and just grip that sanding band. Doesn't need to be ridiculous, so that's quite tight on there. Always worth just spending that little extra time on your prep side. There we go. That shouldn't go anywhere. I'm going to get my attachment nozzle. I lost the spanner from this along many moons ago. So all I'm going to do is loosen it off. Put my sander in there. Do it up by hand, and then I'm just going to nip it up with the Leatherman. press your brake button. That'll then lock that in place so I can nip it. These do actually come with a little spanner for you to do this, but I lost it years ago. Okay, is it there when I turn it on? There we go. So before you start, because we're going to be sanding on resin, I've got a mask up here somewhere. Always make sure you're wearing your safety gear. Now, I should have had this out ready. I've got a P2 mask somewhere, but I've lost it. I'm going to get another one. So I've got a face mask. I'm just going to bung on just to stop me breathing in the dust. Okay. I've got the window open. You can't hear it because I've got sound suppression on, but I have a fan running in the background, so that should help dissipate any dust that's created. Just keep things well ventilated. You don't want to breathe in resin dust. It is toxic. Safety first. I'm gonna put my Leatherman away. That's why it's in good condition, because I always look after it. Right, so what I'm going to do now, using the Dremel tool, I'm just going to work. I'm not doing the whole model in it. That's all going to get. I might give a little touch up here with the Dremel. You can see it's quite rough where it's come off the printer. So I'll probably give a little nip there, and work into these green areas. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to time lapse it rather than do it on this camera, because it's probably going to take me a while, so I'll do a time lapse. Okay, and then once I've done that, what it's going to be a case of doing is I'm just going to get some very fine grit sandpaper and give it the whole model of a very light rub down to try and get a nice smooth surface. Because we're doing chrome, you've got to have a nice smooth surface. If you've got imperfections in the model or things like that, the chrome will just completely show it up. As soon as you put your chrome on, it's just going to stand out like a sore thumb, and you're going to wish you'd have sanded it down at the beginning and done this. Like I said, it's 90% prep work with this. Once you got all your prep out of the way, the chrome in itself is quite an easy process. Now I've got a chrome video which you can see up there. I will put a link. Follow that process for the chroming job. This entire model is going to get chromed. Okay, and it's all going to get done with the process in that video. Okay, so right, I'll set the time lapse going and let's get cracking with the necking. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm sanding down the green stuff. I'm making sure that the surface is nice and even and smooth. So I'm touching the surface very lightly with the Dremel, because you want to avoid scratching the model, and the Dremel will do that if you push on too hard. So now now that's complete, I'm moving on to the ultrafine sandpaper. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for any imperfections on the surface, things like dimples from supports and like print lines that I can sand over to get rid of. And then what I'm doing is using a wet cloth to wipe, not blowing the dust because it will blow it around everywhere. And then I'm inspecting the work as I go along and picking up anything that I might have missed during the process. Okay, so my arm is absolutely killing me from all that sanding. So I've been sanding this for probably the best part of an hour and a half. So you can see it looks a right mess now, but I know, because if you didn't know if you saw in the time lapse, but as I'm going along I'm wiping, inspecting it, and what I'm looking for is imperfections, print lines, any sort of bumps and that because sometimes in the resin you might, especially where supports have been, you might get little pieces of, just a little minute piece of support still there. So I've just been going around checking that. If I feel like it didn't, like in here, that's crisp as hell in there. I didn't need to do any sanding on that. It was purely the mold lines, looking for little imperfections, and just looking for sort of print lines that you can sometimes see because I think once I put the chrome job on, they'll show up. So taking it now, put it a sink of cold water. With resin, don't put a sink of hot water, because what that will do is it will completely soften up your resin and start warping your model. So when you're doing that process, part of cleaning, make sure you use cold water. Okay, so you can see now, if you fast forward to the beginning again, when you look at that, you can see the difference now. It's got such a much better, nicer, smoother surface to it. It's still wet because I'm going to dab dry it now. So I've got my tissue, and all I'm going to do is just dab it dry. The reason I don't wipe is because I don't want bits of tissue everywhere. This stuff's not too bad. I purposely buy this because it doesn't disintegrate like paper tissue does. Get which video it is now. I think it's my leather video. I'll show you this stuff that I get. I get it from Aldi. It's not that expensive, but it's much better than your sort of standard toilet paper, tissue paper. But all I was doing also, when I had it in the sink, I took a little bit of sandpaper in and I wet sanded as well. So when I was I'm just constantly inspecting it. So if I saw a little bit I didn't like, I was wet sanding it over. Wet sanding helps you get a nice smooth surface. So as I was cleaning, I was also going over lightly with the sandpaper and wet sanding, which is giving me a super nice smooth surface now. We'll just dab it dry, and then I'm just gonna give it a go over with the hairdryer just to dry it. I'm not bothered about using the hairdryer just to dry water. I don't like using it on paint work. It tends to dry it, not how I want it. I'm just going to keep dabbing. I just want to get rid of all the moisture. Dry it, and then what I'm going to do is re-inspect it. If it does need any more little bits that need sort of sanding, I'll take it back in, I'll wet sand it. The dry sanding is pretty much over. You can see as it's drying, there's little bits of powder that's starting to sort of just show through a bit, so I'll probably give it another wash once I've dried this off. There's clearly still some little bits of resin powder still there. But for now, I just want to get dry it so I can inspect it. I don't trust it. Very, very careful with don't put your hairdryer on the heat. And remember, heat is going to heat the resin. It's going to start warping the model. So I'm just blowing it with a very lukewarm temperature. But even then, I'm still being very, very careful about it. Now giving that a bit of a dry, you can start seeing the water's evaporating, but you can still see there's powder residue still around. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to give the whole thing a wipe down with that, which we'll do now, just purely because I think if I give it another water wash, it's just going to stay there. So we'll give it a clean over with some alcohol. I don't need to dry that because it'll just evaporate away. So grab my isopropyl alcohol. You see there, that's the stuff I've got. Again, make sure you've got a well ventilated area because this stuff stinks. You know, if you put yourself into this, it's that strong it could probably knock you out. But this is I've got the 99.9. You can get less ones. I bulk buy it on Amazon. I think I get about 15 litres for about 12 quid or something. So what I'm going to do, just got an old rag. It's not dirty, but it's a clean rag. I normally just use it to sort of dry wipe over models when they're printed. I'm going to tip a bit on my cloth. Put the lid back on. Always put the lid back on. Don't leave the lid off because it will stink. I'm just going to give everything a nice wipe over. This should get rid of all that resin residue that's sticking around. See that piece there? You can see it there, little imperfection. I'm going to go back in there and wet sand that in once I've done this. That's the sort of thing I'm looking out for, is just little imperfections in the resin like that. So I'm going to sand that out. I'm going to add a bit more alcohol because this stuff just evaporates. Dip it on, get a bit on your thing. Lid back on because it will stink. And then just try and be as quick as you can, wipe it before it evaporates. That back end's a lot better now than when it was when I started. It's a lot smoother. Got rid of a lot of those support marks that were there. Like I said, most importantly when using this stuff is to make sure you've got fresh air, you've got nice ventilation through your room. Quite good in my house because if I open my window in here and open the bathroom window, I get like almost a draft coming through. It creates like a nice flow of air. And let that wipe down. That's looking really nice and smooth now. What I wanted to do is just get rid of all the resin residue, all the dust. Even when the water was drying, you can see it was still there. Because I really want to inspect the smoothness and texture of the actual surface. Because for chrome, it's got to be smooth. Got any imperfections, it will show up. And if you get that wrong, Skynet will hunt you down and terminate you. This is the actual real, this is the real side to model making. It's prop making. It's time consuming, very time consuming. People seem to think you just get a model, make it, paint it. I wish it were that simple. Okay, so It's nice and smooth there where the blue, where I've sanded on the green stuff. Only bit of advice I'd say is when you sand that down with the Dremel, do it extremely lightly, because those Dremels, that's rough sandpaper, and that will really start scratching your surface. So do that very, very lightly, just the slightest touch, especially if you've got a new sander on it, because it will just rip through it. So do that part very lightly. I had a few little scuff marks where it were gone, but I've managed to buff that out with the fine sandpaper and the wet sanding process. See, the alcohol's doing the job now. It's really cleaning it up, but you have to do the wash first with the water just to give it a really good clean. Dry it off, then go over with the alcohol. Notice I don't say the isopropyl because I can never pronounce it right, so I'll just call it alcohol. Doesn't mean go out and get a bottle of vodka and wipe your model in it. That's for drinking. Just giving it another wipe down now because I want to make sure this surface is super clean. With an alcohol, it will just evaporate away, so I don't need to worry about the drying don't need to worry about drying it. It will dry itself. But I want to make sure the surface is clean and nice and clean, nice and smooth, and free of any imperfections for when I come to do my start the paint process. The rest of the parts I'm happy with. I just had some problems with the quality on this, which is obviously now solved. Just with a bit of cleaning, bit of sanding. Thing is, we're doing this, it's all in the prep. The more prep you put in, the better your quality of your finish is going to be. So don't skimp out on your prep. I know it's the most tedious part when you're wiping, you're cleaning, you're sanding. But it really is the most important part of this. If you do good prep, it will show in your finished product. So just don't scrimp on that side. I can see in there, you can just see where the supports were, and there's those little knobbles. So what I'm going to do, now I've cleaned it, I'm going to go back into the bathroom, put it back in the sink, in the cold water. I'm going to work at them, get rid of them, clean it up, dry it, and then I'm going to re-go over it with the isopropyl. I said it, alcohol. Clean it up again, let it dry. So I'm probably going to be about another 2 hours with this now, prepping it. And then we'll come back to the video again and move on to the next stage. Okay, so now I've done that. I've been over it. I've gone over. I found a couple of little supports that were hiding away in the mechanical gears, so I've shifted them and given it another wash. Let it dry. Dried it. More wipes with the alcohol. Got it to that stage. So all I'm going to do now, I mean, I've got millions of pieces now to do on this. So there's the skull cap. As you can see there, it's got some little knobbles where the supports were, so they're going to get some wet sand in. I'm going to go over the jawbone. That's going to get it, and I've got an absolute metric ton of hydraulic pistons and things like that to do. So probably the rest of my afternoon is going to be doing all the gear, getting everything prepped and ready for the base painting, doing exactly the same process that I've done with the main skull unit itself. So once I've done that, we'll come on there, and the next video is going to be about base painting it. So while I'm doing that, I might as well just do a tutorial about how to base paint. Okay, so I hope that's helped you about how to sand and prep resin work. Again, like and share the page, subscribe, hit that bell. I'm all about touching bells. And then, yeah, hopefully it's helped you guys. And remember, tag me. I'd love to see if you do. If you've found my videos helpful and you follow the process and you do it, I'd love to see it. So tag us away. Again, some of the stuff we've been using, make sure you're using proper protective gear, masks, gloves, things like that, because some of this stuff can be harmful. So just stay safe, work safe, ventilated areas, you'll be fine. Okay, thanks for tuning in and watching this video, guys, and ciao.